You and I often trip over arguments that are leveled by conservatives about the fact that environmental concerns are overblown. And in one way, environmental concerns may well be overblown in some regards. You and I have talked about the problem of models being used to augment arguments over climate change. And those models, at best, are a mechanism for generating hypotheses, but they're being used to test hypotheses, which is especially in a political environment where you can't possibly publish that you've run a model on climate change, and it turns out it's much less of a big deal than we thought, or no big deal at all.
And they're inherently reliant on the assumptions built into them. That is the nature of models. And the fact that you see different results coming out of different models is both exactly what you would expect, but it also means that when you see authors saying, okay, we just threw all these models at this data set, and these are the ones we're going to share the results from with you, you should right away know to wonder, okay, but what are the ones that you didn't show us, and what did they say, and why did you choose to show us the ones that somehow actually fit your preconceptions about what you would find? It's kind of the worst kind of data mining, really.
Yeah, it's like active overfitting, where you're going to pick the models that spit out the right answers. And the problem with models is that if you're free to put as many parameters in as you want, you can get them to look like they match evidence, but it's spurious.
Yep.
So anyway, there's a lot of skepticism, and quite justifiable skepticism in conservative circles about climate change being used as an excuse for authoritarian changes in policy, for economic games being played on people, and folks are rightly sick of this.
But they have largely conflated climate change with environmental risk, environmental devastation, with coloring all who would be concerned about the environment, or who would call themselves an environmentalist, as I do, as I think you do, as these harbingers of doom that are using flawed models to build policy that forces us to stop eating meat, for instance.
Right. To scold each other for driving too far or whatever. So let me just say we are therefore stuck. First of all, we've got an academic environment that's insane, that can't be trusted to evaluate anything, because frankly there's so much pressure inside of that environment to reach conclusions that have been blessed by the proper religious authorities that it's not trustworthy. But that means that in terms of figuring out how healthy the world is and what the effect of what we're doing on the world is, we are stuck with far too much anecdote. And the problem is that anecdote really is fraught with hazards. There's a general pattern of decline of species that those of us who pay attention to these things are noticing everywhere. There are cases in which things go the other direction, like jellyfish and conchs. There are lots of reasons to see variation that have nothing to do with overall decline. So you have to be very careful with anecdote. But all of these things, the punchline of the story is that zero is an absorbing boundary. A population of zero does not rebound. Right? A population, the deer populations up here that were hit literally decreased by something like 90%.
Mm-hmm.
If you came on those same islands now, you'd never know that there was a problem with the deer. They bounced back to
But it was
level.
observable to, us as biologists who'd spent time up here before we moved up here. The last time that we visited before we lived here, we noticed. And we started asking people, and said, "Oh yeah, this happened. They're practically gone."
Right, and in
apparently
fact,
it had been like a horror show. Like they'd been lying dead in clusters.
People had multiple dead animals in their yard and stuff like this. But anyway, they bounced back. You'd never know that it had happened if you came here now. So anyway, many things are possible, but the really important thing is that you don't hit zero. right? Anytime you hit 0 on one of these things, there's no fixing it, right? It's just done. So I don't know how we have that discussion. I'm sympathetic with those who are fed up with the academy telling them what freedoms they are to give up because of some change in the world that may or may not be exaggerated or even real. On the other hand, at some point, you got to start paying attention. Probably everybody who watches this podcast, if they think back to places that they used to know very well and have gone back to recently, will be able to detect some of these things. And the pattern is it's not only frightening, but it's tragic.
Yeah.
I think we have an obligation to deliver the next generation a world that is no less than the one we inherited. It's not you can't go very many generations in a row degrading the world before you leave a place that is just severely broken.